And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold. And we have a special guest to help us break down what to expect when the Saints visit the Steelers in Week 10. And that is Colin Dunlap, host of the Fourth Down and the Steel City podcast. That's another 2400 Sports Odyssey special. He's also the host of the Fan Morning Show on 93.7 in Pittsburgh. It's Colin Dunlap. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How's everything with you guys?
It's good. It's, down here, when the high temperature is 70, that's officially cold for us. And so we got to that point today. So, it's like breaking out sweaters and stuff. I feel like your experience will be slightly different, though.
Yeah, it fluctuates. It's been nice here, but it's going to be cold for the game. Cold, rainy, miserable, nasty. Autumnal Western Pennsylvania. So there you go.
A wonderful time for a dome team this weekend.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. But, breaking news kind of going into this game, the Steelers are without their kicker, Chris Boswell. They spent a bunch of money on him. So that might even up the score just a little bit. He's a guy that's been really apt and able to kick outdoors, and they don't have him. So they'll march out some tomato can they grabbed off the scrap heap.
Yeah, you mentioned injury. Obviously, they're a big one for you guys. It's expected back. TJ Watt, what's the latest update on him?
TJ Watt, Mike Tomlin talks about this all the time. TJ Watt's from another planet. And that's great. And TJ Watt, other than Aaron Donald, is someone that can take over a game and has taken over a lot of games. I'm just not so sure he's at the point cardio-wise or at the point he can take over games just by plug and play, how long he's missed. Even though it's a pec injury, that's asking a lot for TJ Watt to just get thrown into the game with just, 4 or 5 practices. And he didn't really practice because of the mandate from the in the CBA that there weren't really practices in the bye week. So he's only had probably 2-3 padded practices. He'll give it a rip, but I don't expect TJ Watt, prime TJ Watt, but he'll make a difference.
Yeah, I feel like anytime your name is Watt, you feel like you're just having him out there is a big impact in any way. But
right. So
his injury, just to be clear, like he's not quote unquote healthy, right? Like he's going to play through it, but he's going to need surgery eventually, right? That's kind of my understanding.
Yeah, I think it's in the balance. I think I don't think he can hurt it worse or he wouldn't be out there.
Right.
So, but I do think he'll probably get surgery in the offseason. But the way the timeline is now, that the surgery won't put him out into next season if he does in fact need surgery. So you might as well just go at it and go. He's paid to play football, and He's not a guy that's going to sit there.
Now, besides Watt obviously being missing, what's been the deal with this Pittsburgh defense? Obviously, everybody's been talking about how it's not the steel curtain anymore.
Right. Well, the cornerbacks suck, so that's number one. Devin Bush has gotten slightly better, so there's that. I think, one thing that's glaringly obvious is Miles Jack was not as advertised. Everybody thought, well, change of scenery comes from Jacksonville. Miles Jack is going to make a bunch of splash plays. He's simply not. Minkah Fitzpatrick's very good. Minkah Fitzpatrick, though, when he's bad, is bad. But I think he still is one of the best safeties in the game. But he's had some glaring flubs. Whenever you put Miles Jack and you put him with Devin Bush, who stinks, you get an average player. They were looking for better you guys follow football. You have your whole lives. Pittsburgh's synonymous with the linebacker position. They have an edge rusher, obviously, in TJ Watt, but they've always had a full complement of linebackers. And the linebackers not named TJ Watt are very average on this football team.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I think about the Steelers, and it's interesting because Mike Tomlin obviously has been there forever. Bill Belichick has been in New England forever. Sean Payton was in New Orleans forever. All 3 of those coaches ended up having to move on to a new quarterback. Whether it was a rookie, whether it was a young player, or a veteran player. It drove Sean out of the coaching sphere. It exhausted him so much. I feel like Bill Belichick honestly might be getting to the end of his rope, just dealing with the constant quarterback uncertainty. How has Mike Tomlin dealt with that? Because I feel like when you're a coach and you've had that guy for so long, to suddenly not have the quarterback that you are confident in every week, that's got to be a change. There's an interesting dynamic.
Like, you guys watch the Steeler news conferences or get bits and pieces and snippets, and you go, wow, like Mike Tomlin is so prophetic. And look at the stuff he says. Like, you get red paint, you paint the barn red. We've heard all that 5 times. So for us, it's kind of like cycled through. So I think he's handling it as best he can. The big question here now is this, the same old rhetoric about Mike Tomlin never having a losing season and all of that. Well, did Mike Tomlin not have a losing season, or did Ben Roethlisberger not have a losing season for Mike Tomlin? That's a very real question. And this was a question, Jeff and Steve, for a long time. How is Mike Tomlin going to be as a coach whenever he doesn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback? Well, we're in the thick of it. We're finding it out. And Mike Tomlin's a defensive edge coach. I mean, came up on the defensive side of the ball. It's not like they're holding people to 10 points and the offense just isn't scoring points. I think there's a lot of questions about Mike Tomlin and just how much, as with Peyton, just how much it was tied to Breeze. And, it's no knock. Every great coach in history, pretty much, maybe outside of Joe Gibbs, has been tied to a great, great quarterback, like a truly great quarterback. But I think we're starting to understand that the true greatness of the Pittsburgh Steelers over the past 12, 15 years may have been a lot more Ben than it was Tomlin.
Now, you mentioned just before that, what Tomlin is saying, you guys have, been there, done that, heard it before. Right. Is it something that the players feel that way, you think, as well?
No, because there's enough new young guys. Okay. There's Najee Harris. There's Kenny Pickett. George, right. I mean, you guys live in SEC territory. You've seen George Pickens before. Like, how good is this kid, right? Somebody like him. Minka Fitzpatrick's relatively new after the trade. The cornerbacks are all new. Miles Jack walks in. He's new. The offensive line, people couldn't pick them out if they were walking in the mall, other than they were a bunch of big guys. Nobody knows who these guys are. But all that said, I don't think it's repetitive yet. But I will say this. One of the big talking points this week, guys, is, well, there's 2. The first one is this. Is Najee Harris maybe Trent Richardson all over again? That's a very real discussion point at this point. He had 1,200 yards or whatever it was. He had a very good rookie season. But a lot of people, you hear this, don't ever take a running back in the first round. I don't know if he's good, if he's not. I don't know. What I do know is this. It hasn't lived up to being a first-round pick.
I will say it's difficult to ever beat Trent Richardson because he was the number 3 overall pick in that draft.
They flipped him, though, just a year later and got a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And so
sure. Yeah, I just think,
No, you're right. But the Steelers never finish in a place where they get the number 3 pick. So Steeler fans look at things through a different eye of the prism. I'm somebody who, in the past 2 years, I wouldn't have taken either one of the guys they took. I would not have taken a running back. I would not have taken a quarterback. It was glaringly obvious when DeCastro walked out of town, when Pouncey walked out of town, when Ramon Foster walked out of town, when Villanueva walked out of town, that the Steelers were going nowhere without an offensive line. And I thought you can piecemeal skill position players in and get some things done. And we're seeing an offensive line that's just terrible, and they did nothing to make it better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you pick a running back in the top 5, they not only have to be great, they have to be like Saquon Barkley has been fantastic. He was still a terrible pick by the Giants when they picked him.
Jeff, you bring up an awesome point, and I said this actually on Tuesday on our show. If you pick a running back in the first round, he needs to walk in and be the best football player on your team. And there's no room for argument, and there's no room for debate after that for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Chiefs took Clyde EdwardsHelaire in the number 32 overall, and he's been okay. But, that means that he is a massive bust.
Yes.
Right? It's okay as a first-round running back. Like Rashad Penny, there's a lot of bad first-round running back picks if you want to go through the last 5-6 years. And I don't know if Najee, in year 2 is at his peak form yet, but Yeah, I mean, that's a big question because I know a lot of people drafted him high in fantasy this year, and they're not too happy about it.
Well, Kenny Pickett's another story, Steve, that just won't quit here. That's another thing. If Kenny Pickett and look, we're the flagship of the University of Pittsburgh football. We carry Pitt. There's a big Pitt place. It's either Pitt or Penn State in the area where we live, in West Virginia as well. If Kenny Pickett went to Iowa State or Washington State or UTEP, he would not get the excuses that he gets. That's just fact. Is there different pressure on him to some degree because he was Pitt's quarterback? Maybe. There's also a much longer leash. And that just seems to be – people don't want to be as critical of him. I haven't seen it from Kenny Pickett at the pro level.
A little off topic. Just curious what you think of tight end Lucas Kroll, who's on the Saints practice squad. He's a guy that once he went to the practice squad, I was thinking maybe that the Steelers would end up, stealing him away to pair back up with Pickett, but he's still around, and we really haven't seen much of him here.
Well, he's got fabulous hair. That's number one. Lucas Kroll does. Second of all, I was on the practice field. I was talking to Pat Narduzzi last year because he transferred from Florida, right, to the University of Pittsburgh. And when he came, Pitt turns out tight ends. That's one thing Pitt does. They have a bunch of guys that have been pros at the tight end position. He walked out in pads, and I said, holy hell, who is this? Like, it doesn't matter if you're an NFL team or if you're like San Jose State or Tusculum. You put that kid out there, he's the biggest skill position guy that there is. He looked like every bit of a pro to me. And I know that Pickett counted on him. Pickett used him in that Clemson game, and he was really, really good. I think he'll get a little run.
No, I mean, yeah, he looked good in the preseason. I think he's just a developmental guy, and it's going to take a year or two, but I think they want to keep him around. I do want to get back to, so I call him Kenny Two Gloves.
Right.
Clearly you think that he has underperformed what his expectations should have been. So what have his struggles been? Like, what should the Saints be expecting to see? If things go well for the Saints, where will he have struggled? As
red zone. The Pittsburgh Steelers, their longest touchdown this year is 8 yards. The longest touchdown is 8 yards. Wow. The team that has the next shortest distance for a touchdown is 23. Think about that. I mean, that's mind-numbing, really. They've not been good in the red zone. They have seemingly had a bunch of miscommunication with illegal shifts and things. I don't think he has the grasp of the scrimmage line at times and what to do. Now, look, he's scrappy, he's tough, he's all of that moxie, all the coach's son stuff that people want to talk about, John Stockton, he's all of that kind of stuff. But he does have twice as many interceptions as touchdowns. He does throw the football to the other team. He had a chance to beat the Miami Dolphins and threw not one, but 2 picks under 6 minutes left that weren't good balls. I think he really struggles in the red zone, and he definitely struggles over the middle of the field. Now, I don't need to mention this guy in Louisiana, but Matt Canada sucks.
Yeah.
And,
oh, yeah.
Yes.
We know him well.
Yeah, believe me. Matt Canada's inability to call things over the middle of the field has not at all helped Kenny Pickett, but I still think Kenny Pickett could do some things to help himself. Matt Canada should not be employed.
Is he still calling like just crazy shifts on every play?
Everything. Jet sweeps all over the place. They not only do they shift into a nothing. The guy shifts and then he's not in a vital part of the play. And it doesn't make any sense. And he is the king of the 3rd and 2 jet sweep where someone needs to gain 7 yards to get back to the scrimmage line. So it becomes a third. He turns his own 3rd and 2 to a 3rd and 9.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. He's not – I'm surprised he's still employed. A lot of people thought he would be fired during the bye week. He wasn't. I think they're going to probably just ride it out and see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Reich is the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers next year.
Right.
But I'm not telling anybody in the boot of anything about Matt Canada, you don't know.
I can't believe he keeps getting hired. There was a point where I thought that he and Ed Ogeron were just going to have a fist fight at the middle of the field. Like they just did not get along.
I caught some heat, and I don't think I'm wrong, but he recruited Mike Tomlin's son to the University of Maryland. And I seem to think Mike Tomlin doesn't have the heart to fire him because of that. That's just how I feel about it. There's something there why he won't terminate this guy.
Now, I know one of the few bright spots on your guys' offense has been the undrafted rookie at running back, Jalen Warren. Are there any maybe other names that Saints fans might not know about on offense and defense that could have an impact on this game?
Pat Freiermuth is very good. Pat Freiermuth could grow into one of the best tight ends in this game, I think. He's super good. He's a Penn State kid. He's gigantic. He's a big target, especially now with Claypool gone, traded to the Bears. Pat Freiermuth becomes that target in the middle of the field. The big talking point on sports talk radio here in Pittsburgh, though, Steve, that you touched on is everybody thinks Jalen Warren should be the number one back.
Yeah.
He runs harder. He runs more inside. He runs the football with more zest. He almost runs it like James Conner did when James Conner was the back here for a little bit. He just flat out runs better than Najee Harris, but there's the first round pedigree. There's all of that, and you think that you have to get him the football in Najee Harris. I would not be surprised, though, if coming off of the off week, this is where the carries even up or they even tilt toward Jalen Warren.
Wow.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Seattle. Right? Well, when you had drafted Rashad Penny and it was like, well, you drafted a guy in the first round. You have to play him. But then they were like, but Chris Carson's better. I don't care. It was a 7th round pick. He's better. So, yeah, I think it's a similar scenario.
Yeah, I agree. The guy has just been better. He's flat out better. He hits the hole quicker. He has a burst. He does things just across the board better than Najee Harris has. It's going to be interesting. I'll tell you this. You can tell if he'll be a factor in the game by the first 2 series. Mike Tomlin has been loath to give him early game carries. Even if the carries end up evening up, he gives him carries late in the game when generally the Steelers are getting beat. If he gives him some carries the first 2 series, things maybe change with the Steelers offense.
All right. Now, so one more thing, and then we'll cut you loose here. So I think this is a good way to go about it. So the Steelers will win this game if blank. What would you say?
The Steelers will win the game if I would think if the Steelers corners show up, if there's not a home run ball from the Saints offense, which I think could happen outside on the hashes, I think that the Steelers will win the football game too if they sustain drives, even if they kick a field goal, and they sustain drives and essentially play defense on offense and the score's kept low.
If their tomato can kicks a field goal.
They signed this kid, Matthew Wright. Okay? They've signed him before. When you were a kid and you played football, like Pee Wee football, it's not allowed to be called midget football anymore. It's like Pee Wee football or youth football. And you got a trophy, and there's a guy. He's as big as the person on the top of that trophy. If he's 5'4", 119 pounds, I am as big as Ray Zellers. I'm telling you, it's incredible. He is. So they signed him last year, and he has no range. Like honestly, his range is like 46 yards. But maybe he'll kick some field goals. That being said, though, I think if the Steelers can, even if they come up empty, even if they go turnover on downs and maybe a field goal here and there, they can't go 3 and out. They can't keep giving New Orleans the football. They can't do things like that or they're dead. They're dead.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. We've been talking to Colin Dunlap, host of the 4th Down in the Steel City podcast. Go behind any of the lines. Check it out. He's also the host of the Fan Morning Show on 93.7 in Pittsburgh. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, man.
All right. You guys are great. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.